Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, SANS Vulnerability Management Maturity Model. My name is Carol, author of SANS, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speaker is Jonathan Risto, SANS Community Instructor. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenter, please enter them into the questions window at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Carol, and welcome everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy days in order to join us for this next hour when we're going to be taking a look at, as Carol said, the SANS Vulnerability Management Maturity Model. So we've got lots of information. So what I'm going to go straight into is where we hope to be talking today. What are we going to be talking about? And bear with me one second. There we go. My slide wouldn't advance for me. Really what we're going to be covering off today, got a quick agenda just to show you the main topics we'll be taking a look at. First, just brief bio about who I am and why am I sitting over on this side of the camera. Well, not that the camera's on. Then we're going to go straight into the SANS Vulnerability Management Maturity Model, and we'll take a look at how this can actually help us in order to advance and move forward with our vulnerability management programs. And we'll do that by walking through two components, two sub areas of the maturity model itself, and we'll be looking at prioritization as well as reporting, and we'll see where those fit in and just how they can help us out. The model can help us move things forward in our program, and we'll talk more on that. Brief information for those that maybe don't have a copy of the poster or have the information, where you're going to be able to get it. And just before we wrap up, I'm going to give you a couple of sneak peeks about information and things that are coming into Management 516, the class, that the majority of this information is actually pulled from the Managing Security Vulnerabilities Enterprise and Cloud Management 516 course. And then we'll open it up at the end for questions. So let's just dive right into it here. So who am I? Jonathan Risto. I've been working for the past 8.5 years as a cybersecurity researcher with the government. So primarily been working in the areas of vulnerability management and cyber automation. So how can we help speed up the process of, well, looking at a wide variety of problems inside cyber, but how can we make it so we can have our analysts actually spend the time doing the more high value work instead of just having them have to deal with all the mundane and gathering. And so that's where I've been doing a lot of my work. As I said, more recently, been dealing with vulnerability management, asset identification, etc. You can find all kinds of stuff, both in SANS reading room and otherwise, that I've published and put out. So if you want to see some of that, you can easily go and take a look for it. Before I have my current role, I actually played the whack-a-mole game, like some of you probably have or are currently doing, as a cyber operations prime for a government agency. So dealing with that, the Friday afternoons and the weekends that suddenly get wrecked due to problems, etc. So lived in that. So played that game, did the roles over there for 3 years. And prior to that, I worked at a large national telco, doing a wide variety of network design, security, service development items like that. So that's where the brief rundown on what I've been doing. Also have my master's out of STI, so the SANS Technology Institute, currently part of their faculty research committee, so helping advise students and helping them move through the program with their research projects, etc. So that's actually a lot of fun, a lot of good information coming out of STI. So that's where some of the other work I do with SANS. I've been teaching with SANS for over 8 years at the moment. Taught a wide variety of classes, be it the 504, the incident response, to the pen testing with the 560, the 580 for the Metasploit Kung Fu class. Also taught in regards to 20 critical controls, so with the Sec 440 and the 566. And most recently, for the past 3 years now, I've been focusing solely on the Management 516 class that I'm a co-author for. So from starting with the original ideas and writing the course through to now teaching that one on a regular basis. Actually, I was just teaching the course last week in our live online format. So just some of the stuff that I've been doing, etc. But that's really not why you guys are here. So let's just dive right into this. What is this vulnerability management maturity model? And yeah, feel free to say 3 times fast if you really want to. But really, what is this thing that we're going to end up spending the next hour discussing here? And it's what it is David Hazar, the co-author on Management 516, and myself, we put this together. And one of the reasons why, and the model itself and the poster was released in May of this year. So if you haven't heard of it before now, that might be a reason why. It has been published, at least out in the community, since I believe it was around May 15th. So it's only been, 3 months now that we've had it out there. But regularly, both as part of our class and just people asking questions in general on vulnerability management, they're asking, do you know of any maturity models that are actually covering the stuff you're talking about in the course, or just general questions about it? So we didn't find any that we liked and felt covered all the material that we felt were important as is required inside a vulnerability management program. So what every good technical person does when they can't figure stuff out and don't have a solution that's sitting out there for them today, yeah, we came up with one and developed it ourselves. So what this is, we base the vulnerability management maturity model on the CMMI with the 5-level approach that they have, and we'll see that coming up when we take a look into the model itself and step through some of the areas. But we chose that just from a familiarity perspective. And really what we wanted to accomplish out of all this of setting up the vulnerability management model, getting the information out there, it's to provide input and guidance for folks, as I mentioned, across all the areas that we feel are important as part of a comprehensive vulnerability management program. And this is spread across the PIAC model, which is what we teach and wrap the process for vulnerability management around, which is the prepare, identify, analyze, communicate, and treat. And so all of these areas we feel are important, and inside the model itself, we're going to step into it in a second. There's some subcomponents to each one of these, but that's what we're reason and some of the background on it. But it's also just to make sure people, and I'm sure most people on the webcast here understand and realize this, that yes, we have a maturity model. It's not the panacea to everything. It's a way for us to put the information together, break it up into more manageable chunks, and show how we can, some of the key components that are in your program that might help you continue to move the program forward as you continue to roll out new technologies, new processes, new procedures, and try and deal with the complexities that we have as new technologies keep coming into our environments. So it's how we can break it up, and you can see that. And that's what we're going to walk through, are 2 example areas of that today. But what we have, the focus areas, as I mentioned, we deal with it on the PIAC side. So our prepare, identify, analyze, communicate, and treat, as I mentioned. But what we have inside of here, it's been broken down further for us, or we broke it down actually, broken down further to try and, again, continue to shrink it into a manageable component so you can try and identify and see the different chunks that are available to us. So in prepare, we talk about context and policies and standards. You're also going to see in the identify phase, what do we deal with from an automated identification process and the steps across that from the maturity. We also look at manual and external identification. The analyze phase, where we're going to take a deeper look at one of them today, is the prioritization aspect. And the other component inside the VMMM is the root cause analysis. Moving into our communicate phase, and we're going to take a look at the reporting aspect today, is with metrics and reporting, as well as with alerting is the other component that we've placed inside the communicate. And in the treat phase itself, we've got the change management, patch management, and config management, some of our 3 big components we have to worry about as part of a comprehensive program. So that's how we've broken things up. And later on, I'm actually going to show, I'll pull up a copy of the vulnerability management model just to make sure everybody sees how we package this together and sees the overall poster aspect. But that's what we have in here, and that's what we're going to take a look at. So For those that like a bit more of a visualization as opposed to the big poster itself, this is the exact same stuff I had on the last slide, but just showing we've broken it up at the top in the top circle with the prepare, and then moving around through identify, analyze, communicate, and treat. And it's the exact same subcomponents, just a different way for people to take a look at it is why I put it in those two formats. Some people have it, just prefer the variant, so I put it in there for everybody, just as more as a reference for you than anything, but the information is there, is available. But really, probably one of the main reasons and interest that you had in this webcast is, how is this actually going to help us? What can we do with this maturity model to help me not just understand, say inside my own program, where I would be I'm level 1 in the prioritization, and maybe I think I'm in level 3 from a metrics and reporting perspective. But what can we do with this that maybe can help us continue to evolve and move our program forward? That's the real meat of this. And it's not inside the vulnerability management maturity model. Inside this model itself, it does not give you a step-by-step guide for what you're going to have to worry about doing. I think we all could recognize and realize that, but it does not give you, hey, in order to move from step 1 to step 2, this is all the activities you have to worry about doing to have that. And really, the model itself, you're not going to be like most maturity models, and you're not going to be all in level 1 or all in level 2 or all in level 3. Really, your program will be all over the place most likely. You could be level 1, let's say, in the prioritization. You could be level 3 in reporting. You could be doing some stuff with the context and be in level 2. Like you can, as you move around across each of the areas, you could be at different levels of sophistication inside your program, and that's perfectly fine. You can't just say, hey, my vulnerability management program is level 1. We can't do that. The subcomponents really do factor into it, and you will see if you look across your organization, in some cases you're going to be probably fairly mature. You could be at a level 4 or potentially even level 5. And in other places, you're going to be in that level 1, maybe level 2 aspect. So it's giving us that guidance for how we can keep moving the program forward is really what this is intended about the model and how we can leverage it to keep improving our programs. So the two examples I want to take a look at today, prioritization and reporting. So first, we're going to take a look across prioritization. So what did we mean by that? Inside the maturity model itself, as I said, we've got the 5 levels. And what I'm going to do here is step through each of these levels. And in some cases, I'm going to give you examples of what I'm referring to. I don't have them for all of them because, as an example, in level 5 with prioritization, using context-specific information that we have to worry about for our organization, it's really hard for me to give that kind of example for what works in your organization. But I'm trying at least to, I will show some examples of what we're meaning from a level 1. And I will be giving some examples on the screen in regards to a variety of tools. And just from that perspective, any of the examples I'm putting on here, I do cover the majority of the vendors that are out there, the main players in the space. But again, I only got so many slides. And it's also not to say that, as an example here, that this is from Nessus, Nessus can only provide us prioritization level 1 information. That is not the case for any of the tools. It's just giving an example of some of the screens that we have available to us. Most of the tools do give us multiple levels of information. It's how we're potentially using that inside our environment, if we're even using it at all. Or it could also be the different feeds you'd need to start putting in licensing or external integrations. So that's just wanted to make sure folks understand it's not trying to do that from a tool. It's just trying to give you a visualization of what exactly we mean here. So starting off with prioritization, level 1. We're basing this primarily on things like the CVSS score, our common vulnerability scoring system. So the default information you get with any of the vulnerabilities is out there that are created as part of the NVD, National Vulnerability Database. So when we're looking at it from a prioritization perspective, we're really primarily relying on this from a level 1 perspective. And the example I have over here, you can see we have the breakdowns This is for a specific server or IP address of the 192.168.143, but we can see we have a certain criticality, be it with the high, medium, or sorry, critical, high, medium, and low, as well as the informational, and then you can see the ranking that's sitting there on the screen down at the bottom. But it's primarily looking at it from this perspective, so a very vulnerability-centric prioritization based on CVSS scores. And they're actually, all of our vulnerability scanners and devices give us this information. It's one of the default things, and it's the easiest place that organizations start at because it's there. It's real easy for us to go with, and it's what a lot of people actually first think about when you're looking at it from a vulnerability perspective, that, hey, this is what I'm doing. I've got a CVSS score 10. It's got to be more important than a CVSS score 8, more important than a CVSS 5. Just looking at it from that perspective, that's what we mean by level 1. But if you want to move beyond that and continue to advance the program, then we say from a level 2 perspective, it's including available information that could also factor in some of the basic generic threat intelligence that's available, like are exploits actually available, or if their malware exists for it. So again, some of this information is available inside our vulnerability scanners today. You may have to pay for the feeds, but as an example, what we have on the screen is from Qualys with their Threat Protect. So really what we're trying to, or what it's saying here is, as an example, we have on the screen, we've got total vulnerabilities of being 25. It's outlining right near where that circle with the color is in it. But you can see I'm getting some of the breakdown with regards to exploitable, and getting some further context that I'm continuing to layer into my vulnerabilities. And in this case, it's exploitable. Do I have stuff that's maybe unpatchable? We have examples in here of a public exploit. So you can see on the right-hand side of the upper box in the Threat Protect, but it's trying to leverage and put some of this information into our vulnerability prioritization. What happens when we start using some of this? It helps us distinguish between different vulnerabilities that we have, as we know, but it's giving us better context. And so I can maybe see if I've got, even if I've just based it on vulnerability scores, CVSS scores, I have 2 items that come up as a value of 10. One has an exploit available that I know about publicly out there, let's say in Metasploit, and you have another one that doesn't. We can weigh this information, and then we know which one we should probably take a look at first and remediate, either through patching or compensating controls or configuration changes, whatever the vulnerability is related to. But that's how we're saying from a level 2 perspective, start leveraging that extra context. And in this case, it's dealing specifically with the exploitability and things. So continuing on from the context perspective, moving into level 3, what we're wanting you to do is we're actually start to grouping this information and correlating it with other information sources we have. And here we're giving an example on the screen of doing it from an asset inventory perspective. So here in the example you're seeing off to the right-hand side, if you're looking at the y-axis of that diagram, what you're seeing is the vulnerability count standpoint. So you can see I've got whatever number of vulnerabilities associated with it. At the bottom, we've actually broken it up by, in this case, it's more of a hardware type. We're seeing things like the ThinkStation S20s. We've got MacBook Pros 17-inch in there as examples. And this information we've generated from a ServiceNow with the demo data you have as part of the, if you want to run in on the developer instance of ServiceNow as an example. But what we're saying in level 3 is I can start to group things together into a more meaningful package for the people that we need to communicate with. So for us in reporting, in this example, if I know the people that are associated with the MacBooks, just picking on those, I'm able to get that information to them because I've carved it out, broken up, and started grouping this information together. You can do this not just from an asset of a hardware perspective, like we have the example here. You can do this from an application perspective as well. So you have certain groups that are responsible for the, let's say, Microsoft Office applications. but you have different groups, say, that are responsible for some of the embedded things in the web applications, like pick on Flash, Java, the browsers themselves, say Chrome or Firefox. You can start breaking this up. So when we do that from a vulnerability management perspective, we're advancing and simplifying it and making it easier for our end consumer of the information as we group this together to be able to get access to it. And this ties really well in with the reporting, as you're going to see. But that's what we start doing. It's again leveraging context, but integrating with other data sources. So I can do this kind of grouping. And from an asset prioritization perspective, the common one a lot of people can think about or can easily relate to would be, say, asset locations. So if I'm grouping my items together, I know, say, the web DMZ servers are more critical than, say, the internal, let's go, executive workstations. There are different priorities associated with that because I'm able to leverage the context, get the grouping and breaking of the information up to be able to see that. So that's what we're talking about on the level 3. Level 4, where we start stepping into it here, is getting more information related to threat intelligence. And it still can be generic threat intelligence, whereas in level 5, we're dealing with company-specific threat intelligence. But often what happens here from the maturity inside your organization, you're leveraging this data and you're going to be doing more information merging and fusion between, and often in cases, it's multiple tools or data sources that we have. So it's getting some of that together. And as I keep saying, it's getting more and more granular on the context for how I can potentially manage the information. So if you think about it, I have the CVSS scores. I'm starting to see if there's exploits available. I've done the asset groupings. Now I'm looking even at further threat intelligence that maybe is out there from, pick on an example, if it's actively being used in the wild from a current attack mechanism. It's currently in some of the malware kits. That's where you can see you've stepped up the maturity for us into a level 4 perspective. And when you do, we say from the level 5 with the prioritization, we're looking at it specific from company information. So not just the generic feeds we're getting in, but what am I doing in generating myself or able to ingest from a threat perspective that I can then fuse into this prioritization process and be able to leverage and really get it so it's not just generic, hey, this is what's happening in general on the internet, down to this is what's happening to me as an organization, and this is really what should matter, again, for me as part of the organization, or me as an organization, when trying to deal with the prioritization of my vulnerabilities. So that is how an example, at least, and I'm going to walk through another one here as well, with regards to how I can leverage the maturity model to help see how I might be able to progress inside my program. And so as I've mentioned, I think all of you could probably see this point as well. It's not giving you the, hey, this is what you have to do step by step, but it's, if you think today, okay, I'm leveraging some of the stuff that's from the out-of-the-box prioritization with my tool. We're using the CVSS, we're using some of the threat feed intel in there, but how could I move this and take it to the net, like continue to advance this? Because I'm really not sure. That's where you can see, hey, if you start leveraging in, as we were, my example, stepping back a slide into level 3 on the prioritization, start getting that grouping, getting the further context related to the assets. That's how I can continue to evolve my program on the prioritization stage. So that's how we can leverage this to help out. So just to give another example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through some of the reporting stuff, but because of some of the verbiage that is in there, I want to make sure that everybody actually has the same definition. And we have this defined on the poster and as part of it, just so everybody understands what we mean. It's off on the right-hand side, but we need to define what we mean by operational, program, executive, and contextual metrics. So I'm going to have one quick slide on each of these to start with, and then we'll look at the reporting examples that I have for us today. So what do we mean by operational metrics and measures? They're derived normally right from the tools that we have available to us. and they help us understand what's happening with that component. So example of some of the metrics are the new vulnerabilities by star. And what we mean by star, it could be by, if you want to break it up, if you're doing it by operating systems, are you doing it by application, are you doing it by systems? So those are just some examples of what we mean by the by, however you're slicing the data. So those are some examples of what I mean by operational metrics. Moving next into what we want to term as program metrics. These step up a level. It's not a specific functionality about what's happening on this particular product or how many vulnerabilities are there. It's trying to understand what's happening in the program and how effective we are. So with some examples of what we mean by program metrics are, as an example, mean time to resolve over time. So what am I actually getting from what's my rolling average of how fast am I actually able to resolve the problems as they're coming into my environment? It's not telling me in this example that I'm doing really good in the Windows side, I'm not doing so well on the Linux side. My sub applications like Java and etc. are whatever. I could slice the data like that, but this is telling us overall in the program what's happening. So that's an example, and we give the other one on the screen as well about what it is from a program metric perspective. Moving on and defining what we mean by the executive/board metrics, and these really are the ones that we're highlighting to the senior leadership about the program and the risks that are associated with the vulnerabilities, or the program as a whole is identified as risk. And often we're doing they are on the dashboards, we're seeing trending lines, etc. But it's high level. Taking a look at organizationally is what we mean from the executive. And so we give the examples here of 3 exclusion group. What are the top 3 exclusion groups that are happening? So are we, because we can't do an upgrade because of a legacy app, I need to exclude this kind of, or this problem from being resolved until that legacy app is dealt with. Or the other example, we give the vulnerability management risk score based on the operating unit. So my business units that are out there, or I could do it by whoever is the operational units for managing it, et cetera. But the higher level view of what's happening organizationally or in these subcomponents, that's what we mean by board. And the contextual measures, last point, because we mentioned this off again in the model, is these are, again, they don't relate to, directly relate, sorry, they definitely relate to vulnerability management, but they're not tied in right into the program itself from a governance standpoint, or even in the operational aspect, but they help us understand what's going on with the program. So they're giving us the view in organization and potential things that'll impact us. So examples we have here, I'll look at the second one, percentage of new resources created without required tags. So you have cloud resources that are spinning up in your environment, but they don't have the required tagging on it that we have mandated, let's say from a policy standpoint, that you have to have the business owner as a tag, you have to have who's the operational prime, you have to give, if it's based on containers, what was the base container image that this is based on. All like the extra tagging you can do in the cloud environment that really can help us understand things. But if I'm spinning stuff up without that, I'm losing the context. So that's what we're meaning from a contextual measures and metrics. So why this is all important for us right now is because it ties back into our reporting aspects, because all of these measures and metrics are some of the key functionality we have in reporting, and we've grouped this together in this subcomponent of the communicate. So level 1 from a reporting standpoint, we're using the out-of-the-box information that's coming to us. We're not doing customization. We're really not filtering heavily. It's just what's available to us today from the scanners. So here's another example that comes in from Nessus, just giving you the breakdown. This one's specifically looking at a scan in here, but hey, I've got an out-of-the-box thing. I've got some Microsoft Windows issues, counting of 18. I've got in the middle of the screen, you can see I've got my one critical Microsoft Server 2003 vulnerability that's out there. So it's, again, it's just this out-of-the-box functionality. I can drill into these and all of the tools, all these examples, you can always drill in to try and get more information about what's happening. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this, but that's what we're meaning. It's some of the out-of-box reports. We're not really doing heavy customization. And if you were to run this in your environment, then it generates that 7,000-8,000 page report that then you can send off to your CISO, and they will love you forever, I am certain, if you do that. But I've had a CIO that actually asked for a copy of a vulnerability report when we first launched our vulnerability scanner. 650 pages, and we were trying to convince that individual they did not want to see this, but they were getting adamant, so we sent them the report. And you can probably guess what the response back was from the CIO at that point. Absolutely nothing. They never asked for the report again. They never even commented on the report because they recognized that, hey, this wasn't quite useful for us. I use that example though, because it's an out-of-the-box report you can generate showing your organization, but it's not doing much for us to help bring the program forward, or in this case, the end consumer of that report, while they did ask for it, it wasn't helpful for them to get an understanding, because diving into 700-page document, not overly useful, and most people do not have the time to step through that. So it's using some of that out-of-box stuff. Level 2, this is where we start actually grouping and filtering things together. So you're getting the information that your specific and client organizations are actually needing, and simplifying the reports down. Again, some of this can be done inside our existing tools. Not all tools can let me slice and dice the data how I need it to. But what we're meaning by this, so say when I was doing some of the operation works, again, we had like the database administrators, we had our email administrators, we had the underlying operating system people. I'm able to target it down, so if I have database problems, I can send that report alone to the database people. Relevancy, instead of making them wade through that 700-page report, now here's the report that's relevant for you. So how can I start to group this together as best we can with the reporting? That's what we mean by level 2. Again, stepping up the next level from a level 3, what have we done to define what we need inside our organization? Have we actually generated all the program, operational, and executive metrics? And we're doing this on a regular basis. We're breaking it up as they need to, and we've generated and are able to generate regularly is what we're pointing from a level 3 perspective. Got an example coming up here for what we're talking about on level 3. So you can see I've got a lot of on this example, I've got application security risks, and I've got what kind of window of exposure is associated with those. This would, for me, dictate that I've got what kind of metrics I need to have defined. I've broken it up into manageable chunks. The examples here, so I can see on the left-hand side, my top application security risk is related to cross-site scripting. And I apologize, on the right-hand side, the window of exposure, you can see where I'm highlighting, there's that little pop-up window. It gives you the total number that are there, the 671, besides it being off on the right-hand side as well. It gives us that information, but I can see, hey, how long have I actually had this problem in my environment? So the average window of exposure, 671. In this case, days. I can start to get context around this. And you can define some of these, how they're reporting them back. But you can see I've got my problems related to applications, and I have some finer metrics that I'm generating in the program. This is an example of what we mean by level 3. So you can see potentially in your own program, if you're actually generated some of this information or have this level of granularity and types of reporting, you're probably in a level 3 inside your organization. If you're using the out-of-box reports, have some of the basic groupings going, you're probably at level 2. We want to step it up to level 4. An example here, well, what we mean by level 4. What we're getting into, we're starting, again, getting more and more granular with what we're able to measure as part of the program. And the examples we're giving here on inside the slide is what am I worrying about from a vulnerability age? And you can see on the left-hand side, I'm doing it by a system perspective. So is it a system 1 whatever, we've grayed out the exact systems themselves. But then you can start to look to see, am I in a compliancy type perspective? And I'm starting to be able to dig deeper into the information available to me. So here is an example. You can see with the vulnerability aging by solution on the right-hand side, the Java updates, or update Java, related across there, most are conforming, some are nearing due dates. With the Windows updates, it looks like some are overdue for us, because you can see the 3 different colorings in there. So I'm trying to get into some of the patterns, the root cause related to the challenges that's happening with my reporting, or sorry, with my inside my environment through my reporting. So as I start to get to this level with the maturity in my program, it's helping me get to that root cause analysis work it's quite visual and quick for me to be able maybe to figure out, okay, looks like we might be having some problems in the Windows updating and what's going on, because there's a group that's overdue. What's happening there? Let's see if we can start to narrow that down and identify the challenges we're seeing. So that's the example from a level 4 perspective. Finally, level 5. What we've got is custom reporting that's available. So again, a lot of the items in level 4 are customizable, but you also want to have this available to your end consumers of the information. And I'm a big proponent of both automating the generation of this stuff and making it available in an on-demand perspective. So it's a self-serve option. So my user, my end consumer of the information can log in, and let's argue it's the database administrators that I gave the example earlier. They could log into this portal, see the relevant information for them, and ideally, you'd also even want to make it available to them that they could generate and request the remediation check, because say they log in, they see that there's, simple example, there's a patch missing, they need to manually apply. Go through, get the remediation work done, then they can request the scan validation from the vulnerability management scanning tool to make sure that that's been applied correctly, and the ticket and associated work can be marked as closed, so they can do that on-demand request of it. So that's where we're taking it on the level 5 aspect related to reporting. Make it self-servant so the users can get to it when they need it and request the information that they want. You're also able to do more customization, accepting a request. All of this is into the level 4 and 5 for really, well, you have this information, can you give it to me like this? And then setting it up so you can actually generate that for the end client, a specific request that comes in. Last week in my class, I had a student that was actually in there, and they said they have something similar to this self-serve portal, but what they do is they send the information out to the end consumer. So I'll stick with the database administrator example. They make sure that they know what the problem is, but they also give them access to, this is how you can remediate it with if it's available from an internal tooling perspective. In order to remediate this, you're going to need to worry about doing this, click here in essence to get over to where you need to worry about remediation, and how you can request in further details, how you can actually initiate a rescan, items like this. They're trying to make it really simple for the end person to look at and deal with the problems. So that is a more advanced stage than what some people have inside their environments. But with that, that's you hopefully can see now how I can leverage the maturity model to tie it back in to help me advance my program. So this maturity model, for those that maybe haven't seen it, here is what the maturity model is from the poster perspective that you can get from the SANS website. This I put in as a screenshot, so you'll have it afterwards. But what I want to do is I'm just going to quickly flip over to my web browser so you can actually see the model, and I can zoom in better. So you can see this, where I have in the next slide where you're going to be able to grab this. So the vulnerability management maturity model, for some reason, they seem to think it's the back of the poster, but really it's the front. In my view, that's what matters. But zooming in on this, I'll just go in here with the viewing. You can see across, we have the different levels at the top. So level 1 with our initial, through to level 2 managed, level 3 defined, quantitatively managed with level 4, and then level 5 we're optimizing. And scrolling back over to the left-hand side, you can see we have this broken up again by the different phases of our PIAC, our prepare, identify, analyze, Scrolling down, communicate and treat. And the subcomponents, we took a look at the metrics and reporting, and going up here, the prioritization. But it's across all of the subcategories I talked about earlier in the presentation. And I'm just going to zoom back out here because we have some other information that's on this poster as well that can be helpful. Our definition of the metrics we have over on the right-hand side, be contextual, operational, program, and executive, and we're giving examples as you scroll to the bottom on the right. And up near the top, we actually talk in regards to some of the cloud services. Give you a brief idea of the cloud service responsibility model. Identification services by cloud, we're giving you a quick chart, as well as at the top, just the cloud vulnerability management roadmap for how you move between the levels. So there's just some other information that we've made available here as part of the poster. And then if you want to look at the other side, for those that are interested in seeing what my opinion, as I said, the back of the poster is, this is the CISO mind map that we put out. This has been updated again, but it's just the CISO mind map for all the various areas we have to worry about. But we're not as concerned about that today. So this is the vulnerability management maturity model. And what you can do yourself, if you have not already done it, I'm going to flip back to my presentation, is you can request a copy of this so you can have it and be able to put it up either in your specific office. You can put it in a common inside the SOC if you want it, wherever. If you have if you want it available, or if you want to get a copy of it. If you just want to download the PDF from a reference, you can do that as well. You go to the SANS website, it's under the resources tab. I'm showing you where that's at, and then it's under posters, and you can scroll down and from on there, and then you're able to see all the variety of posters that are available. And there's lots of them that are out there, and all the historical ones are still available. Ours is currently sitting as number 4 since it was released in May. I also give you a copy of the direct link in there in order to take a look at the maturity model if you wanted just to go with the direct link when you have a copy of this presentation. Save you having to worry about driving to get to it, there's a direct link to get to it. One small thing wanted to mention for those that maybe had downloaded the poster when it first came out, and probably if you downloaded it before, I think it was last Tuesday when this was corrected, there was a small typo you may have actually noticed, you might not have. It was over in that metrics section, and it was on one of the example metrics, and we had this little extra letter in there. It was vulnerability counts and meant time to resolution over time. Yeah, it should have been mean time to resolve over time. So that old version that you downloaded, or if you got a copy of the printed poster with that mistake, you now have a collector's item. The new one is available online that fixes that. We try and catch all of those. That one obviously was missed. It is what happens, what it is. But anyways, John sent in an email about that, and we got it quickly fixed. But just thank you for sending that in. And if you do have questions or see problems inside the poster itself, I think we're pretty good. But if there is something that you see it's a problem, please feel free to reach out, and I'll tell you at the end how you can get in touch with me or my co-author, David Hazar, or anybody really. You can get in touch with us and we'll get this stuff corrected. But we'll worry about that in a couple slides, how to get to that. So one other thing I wanted to cover off today, just before we get into opening for questions for about the last 10 minutes, is some of the things that are coming up. There's 2 rather big changes coming for Management 516. For those that maybe has taken Management 512 or the 514 class, you're going to be familiar with Cyber42. But what we're doing is we're actually integrating this into our class now. So it's a tabletop exercise that happens and goes through. So what it is we end up, it's basically a continuous, or it's a lab that carries on and is broken up into about 12 parts. And what you start off with is choosing initiatives. So common things we have to worry about in vulnerability management. Like, do you want to deploy an asset identification system, or are you going to deal with patch and config management? Or just there's different initiatives you end up choosing with your team. And then we have various events that get put on over the course of the week, events that are thrown at you, and you get to choose an option. Okay, with option A, B, C, or D. And there's different scoring that happens based on your choices and how that's leveraged with your initiatives. And what happens at the end is we end up getting scored on all of this at the end of each event, and then cumulatively at the end of the week we end up with a winning team. So that's what we're leveraging and going to be putting into the course. It will be available, I believe it's coming out for some of the October runs. I don't remember the exact date, but you'll see it updated on the course webpage. And if you want, get in touch with me and I'll gladly make sure you're on the loop for you know exactly the date that's coming out. Other thing with regards to the Cyber42, we actually have some webcasts coming up. There's a game day that we're putting on. There's one coming up next week actually, and it's already at capacity, 100 people. That shortly after we launched it, it actually went straight to capacity. It's a 3-hour activity is what we're doing, but given the popularity, we put a new one on for September as well. And I believe that's September 23rd is when that is. And as of this morning, at least, there were still about 30 spots. So if you want to see what this Cyber42 is, see some of the activities we are leveraging and bringing into our course, it's a 3-hour webcast, interactive. We're going to be on Slack. You're going to be broken up into teams. Feel free to register for that. It's under the webcasts again on the SANS website, just how you signed up for this. Feel free to go there and look at it. There's another Cyber42 game day coming up for October. It's not Management 516, it is for another class. But again, another 3-hour game day, going to be leveraging and running through this in order to both give you guys some exposure to it, get feedback on it in general, but this tabletop exercise and activity that you could see and how you could run it and how it does run as part of the course, but giving you access to some of this. And another final change I didn't put on the slide, but for those of you that have been around SANS for a while and maybe taken some other classes, especially in this, the technical ones, you may have with that capstone exercise, maybe won a coin. There's one coming for 516 soon. We're finalizing the design right now of it, and it will be out shortly. So then the winning teams of Cyber42 are going to end up actually getting the coin for the class. So just another fun change that's happening from the 516 standpoint. But hey, what if you want more information about this? What is it, this vulnerability management model? I know we've only been talking about 45 minutes right now, but what if I want more info? There's blog postings. I posted one introduction to the vulnerability management model on the SANS blog site on July 5th. Next week, there's going to be another one that's going to be stepping through deeper on the VMMM, vulnerability management maturity model. So much easier to say actually than VM. Yeah. There's blog postings out there, and we continue to post. My co-author David Hazar has posted stuff on his LinkedIn as well, just resources available and specifically about the model itself. If you want more info, we actually covered this a fair bit in the class, and some of the slide information that you have seen today, or examples of the metrics, pictures, and so we're covering this off as part of our prioritization. The entire class stepping through this is built and helping you continue to evolve and move your program. And that's where you can actually get some information as well on how to continue to advance the program in more in-depth guide than what I was able to put together here in a 45-minute webcast. Want to reach out to me? You can see the Twitter and the LinkedIn handle as well. Feel free if you have questions, comments, anything. Please feel free to do so. Reach out to us. So with that, I've left us with exactly 21 minutes to be able to take questions from the original time blocking. So thank you for attending so far, and I'm going to turn it back over to Carol in order to handle from a question perspective, if there are any.
Yes, thanks for that great presentation. We do have a couple of questions ready for the Q&A. However, if anyone has a question for Jonathan, please enter it into the questions window now. The first one asks, on slide 12, on level 3, there's various MacBook Pro 17-inch. Is it because there was detected different OS versions? Should we prioritize based on OS versions also?
That's a good question. Thank you. I'll step back to that slide. I believe you said it was on slide 12, but I know the picture you're referring to. So I apologize for the quick peruse back. So we did have on here, yes, MacBook Pro was in this spot. We have MacBook Pro on another spot. And what this actually is broken down is both by our inventory perspective, but you're actually getting more granular. If you were to drill in, you could actually see the vulnerabilities that are associated with each of these. So we hadn't, in this particular example, it didn't actually merge. We didn't merge it together because we were specifically diving in deeper and deeper and showing how you can continue to slice the data up. So that is why you end up with the multiple entries for the same asset type at this point. But it's a great question. Very good eye to catch that one. But yeah, that is the reason why you end up with multiple on there. It's because there's another categorization factor that's not as clearly listed out here as we were drilling in and creating this inside ServiceNow.
All right, thanks. Have you had any success reporting based on business risk?
Success from want to make sure, or I'm going to tell you how I'm taking that, and hopefully that's the way you were asking about. Success from the organizational and vulnerability management program reporting purely on risk to the organization related to however you want to slice the data up. Yes, there is some success related to that. And some of it does depend on how your organization both would like to see the information, and do you have some of the tooling available to help you get there. As an example, some of the I class there, we call them second generation type vulnerability scanners, and even some of the like the traditional ones people think of beyond Qualys or the with our Tenable SC, Tenable IO, those products. But when you're looking at, I'm specifically thinking in my head at the moment in regards to, you've got Kenna Security as an example, and Brinka. They actually do some risk calculation, because what they end up doing in those tools, as an example to start with, is they're leveraging and bringing in more than just the vulnerability data information. They integrate with, some of them will integrate actually into your application security tools. Others, most tools now will start integrating into your asset management if you have it. So I'm starting to fuse more data together in order to get a more holistic view to the organization. So that's when I see risk reporting actually getting more usable, because I'm actually starting to collect it, not just say my infrastructure elements that my vulnerability scanner, my classic vulnerability scanner is looking at, or even adding in the cloud elements that I'm able to do through my API calls still with those scanners. But when I start to be able to leverage in the other components, pick on application side, am I able to drag in more stuff from a configuration management perspective? Am I looking at even some of my compliancy aspects? So you can get that more holistic view, a complete view from the risk standpoint. That's when I see it working. If I'm just running a risk-based report that is solely on my the classic, what we traditionally think of the enterprise type scanning, where I'm just looking at my servers, my switches, you're probably hitting some of your infrastructure elements as well with your routers and the servers and those components. Because it doesn't give me the view of all aspects in the program, I personally don't find that as useful from the risk. But when you're seeing it compared to all aspects for the program, that's when I start to see the risk reporting working better and being more usable as the end consumer. And normally the consumers are definitely the higher level management, because quite frankly, your frontline operator isn't going to care about the risk. They want to understand what they need. They don't even quite frankly care that there's a vulnerability. Tell me how to fix the problem you want me to do. Give me the solution you want me to implement, not just say, hey, here's a CVE, go figure out how to fix it. That's where I see the risk. It's the higher level, and when I can encompass the majority, if not all of the aspects we need to from the vulnerability management side. Hopefully that answered the question.
All right, thanks. I've got two questions. I think they're kind of the same question. Any thoughts on a tool or method for handling scans or reports without a vendor vulnerability management reporting tool? And he also asks, any decent open source tools for management and reporting of vulnerabilities?
Yeah, the how can we get the information together and fuse it? There are tools that can be helpful here, and I tend to find it similar to how I was answering some of the stuff from the risk. It's the ones where I'm able to both take data potentially from multiple data sources, and I'm able to do some fusion of that information, be it through customized scripting or potentially built into the product to begin with. So an example, this the one that I've got sitting here on the screen, since I'm back on slide 12, with ServiceNow, just as one example of a product that you can do a lot of customization with. So you can get into those customized reporting. We, in the class, and I've had a webcast or two in regards to things called solution groups. So that is an example. I'm able to set up the tooling and customize it in order to create what I think is a useful measure and way to group vulnerabilities together. I have to add more fields, etc. So that's a product offering as an example that will work out there for that. You can also do it when you have most of the time this is in a larger organization, you have a back-end data warehouse of some form. And then you could be using things like Crystal Reports is popping into my head right now, but something that's able to pull the data from that back-end data warehouse and do the manipulation that you want. Again, this takes customization to do because there's not an easy, obvious, out-of-the-box solution for how to generate how to fuse the data from your Jira for your coding that also ties in with your vulnerability scanner Koalas, that also ties in with, like you can see there, that we at least have the data scheming available for it, but I have to worry about how I want to fuse that data together and get the reporting. So that's some examples of some products there. In regards to the open source question that probably ties into this as well, I personally haven't seen much on the open source products that are that would be good from the reporting. There definitely are some out there. I personally haven't dealt with any right now, and I can't think of some off the top of my head I've heard people mention. So I don't have a good answer there for you, but that might actually be a worthwhile topic to explore as, say, part of a blog posting or something. I'm just going to drop myself a note here, open source reporting tools. So I apologize, I don't have the answer to that, but sorry, Carol, but yeah, I don't have a good answer for you off the top of my head.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. Is there a GIAC certification associated with Management 516?
Great question. For Management 516 at the moment, there is not a GIAC cert. The course has been out now for a year and a half ago, I think is when we first started running our betas. We're full live running basically every month we are running at the moment. GIAC tends to lag in the 12 to 18 month time frame in order to put a certification out, unless there is massive demand coming from the end user, so you as the end consumer of the course. So at the moment there is not one. I know it's on the books to be taken a look at. If it is something you would like to see, please feel free to reach out to the main contact info for GIAC. It's posted on the GIAC.org website, and you could ask them and say you're interested in this, can they provide a time frame? But right now I do not have one that when this is going to be out.
All right, thanks. We'll squeeze one last question in. It says, what's the main advantages or disadvantages by getting VM from an MSS provider?
Do we have time to go into that in 3 minutes? That's a good question. I think for a lot of organizations, the benefit of going to a managed service provider for vulnerability management, or even really any aspect of security, is for the smaller organizations and even some of the larger ones, it's getting that economy of scale, and from your managed service provider, the expertise that they have in the field that we may not have ourselves. So let's focus this down on vulnerability management. You're going to get the people that have been dealing with the 724 that look after it. So there's benefits there. The reporting and tooling that they have available probably has had some more customization done. So you're going to be able to leverage some of the more in-depth measures and metrics that you would not necessarily have to do or be able to do yourself to start with until you spend either the professional services dollars or some of the in-house dollars, time and effort from your FTEs, full-time equivalents of people to get that work done. So there are some key benefits there. The obvious drawback with any service provider is you have a cost associated with this. So you're taking potentially, you have to worry about, it's not a CapEx dollar that I'm actually able to go out and buy this piece of equipment that then I'm going to operationalize, and I have to depreciate over the next 5 years. I'm now worried about an OpEx dollars, and depending on your organization, which is easier for you to get. So that's one of the key drawbacks I tend to find with MSPs.
that it's you end up, can you afford the type of information you want to get? And there are cost savings there. Like, don't get me wrong, you are definitely able to let your staff, when you are understaffed, and I think all of us are, we don't have enough people to do the work. It's letting you leverage that and bring the resources to bear fairly quickly to your organization. And the only other drawback I can think of right now is if you want to do this as a short stopgap measure, bringing that back in-house can be depending on the tooling and what you have in your contracts, bringing that historical data back in-house could be a challenge. So if you ever wanted to go from an outsourced model to in-house, you may actually lose some of your trending ability until you build up that data in-house, because they just may not be able to export it and you be able to ingest it in the way you want to. So that's at least some points, positive and negative for it. So hopefully that helped deal with or answer that question and give you some insight into my thinking. So back to you, Carol.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for your great presentation, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.